Welcome to Scott Family Homestead. We are a family of 6 starting a first-generation farm on an old retired dairy farm in northern Wisconsin. We are raising cattle for beef and dairy. We have pigs, chickens for meat and laying, and also a dual-purpose project, and thousands of square feet of garden space. But we didn't always have so much room to grow. We started on a small homestead with gardens, poultry in the backyard. A small flock of chickens is what got us started with it all. We lived in an area that was almost entirely wooded, and it made it very difficult to have the homestead we dreamed of. We did eventually get a high tunnel greenhouse, which inspired us to grow even more, and we got our start there with pigs, with just a couple of pigs clearing some land in the backyard. But in January of 2023, we closed on our farm. We are on our way to sign our closing paperwork on our new farm. Welcome home. The house is a classic late 1800s farmhouse. It had an addition put on in the 80s, and it was really in great shape, but we didn't move in right away. We wanted to do a little bit of work on the house before we moved in, including the kids' rooms. So we ended up painting all of their rooms, and we tore out the carpet and redid the floors. These floors turned out beautifully. Like just a little bit glossy, but mostly a matte finish on them. Today I'm working on painting trim, and then we're gonna get the kids moved into these rooms. By the end of February, it was time to move in and get to work because we had bought our very first cow.
Oh my gosh, we have a cow. Like a real live cow in our possession. We are responsible for this creature.
While I don't necessarily recommend getting started with a heifer, this cow was the very best first cow we could have dreamed of. She started out just living in the barn. We got her all settled in until we could get a pasture space and fencing done for her, and she was very patient with us. Such a good cow. This is Lorelei. She is almost 2 years old. She is a Jersey cow, and she is pregnant and due in June. And she is going to be our family milk cow. We decided to pick a theme for all of our 2023 animals' names. We went with Gilmore Girls, so this was how we chose Lorelei's name, and it set us right up to welcome her baby Rory later in the summer. In April, the snow started to clear and we were finally able to explore our property more. We found a really cool abandoned hunting cabin on our back acreage, and we started to realize how many projects we had really inherited with this property. But all of that would have to wait because we had a priority first of getting our cow out onto pasture. We really wanted to get her some pasture friends, some more cows, but first we needed the infrastructure to be able to keep them in and keep them safe. So we started with a temporary fencing, just an electric line with step-in posts, and she absolutely loved it. She was so happy to be outside, so happy to be on grass, got the zoomies. Everything was a little bit better once she was out on pasture. The work did not stop there. We started getting deliveries of chickens, including our dual-purpose birds that we were giving a try, meat birds, and turkeys that would all grow out on our pastures, but we had to get some infrastructure built for them too. We got 5 pigs from another local farm, with one being designated to be a gilt that we would keep on our farm for breeding.
Welcome to the farm,
and
piggies.
Hopefully have piglets next year.
You're gonna love it here.
The last of our new spring arrivals were our cow-calf pair, a low-line Angus mama and a little baby White Park cross. We named them Suki and Martha, going right along with our Gilmore Girls theme for our names for 2023. We got to work putting together some chicken tractors so that we could run our chickens through the pastures behind our cows. They come through behind and break up cow patties and work on pasture management. So these are a design that we put together ourselves. We built the first couple that year. We really got into the routine at this point of just taking care of everybody. We still had pigs in the barn. We didn't have pasture space for them yet, but the cows were outside and they were very, very happy. And we were working on planning out the rest of our farm, where we were going to put things, all while having a baby in tow. Things were incredibly busy. With Ryan working full-time in tech, we only had so much time in the evenings to get things done, and the garden hadn't even been planted yet. The grass was growing, and thankfully we had somebody who had rented out 40 acres of fields and handling all of that grass and corn that we simply did not have the equipment or time to deal with. Everything was growing really, really well, except for the garden. Growing a garden in a hayfield was proving to be extremely difficult. Even with ground cover, we were really struggling to get things to germinate and to outcompete the grass. Thankfully, plants want to grow, so if you put them in the ground, you give them some mulch, some water, some food, you will get some produce out of this. So we had rows of potatoes, tomatoes, green beans, carrots, and we did get some food out of this garden, even though it was a much smaller footprint than what I was used to growing in, and I had to struggle with the weeds and the grass all year long. The garden did grow, but it definitely needed a little bit of extra work that we were not able to give to it with how busy everything else was. Meanwhile, our oldest was home from school for the summer, and everybody was realizing just how much work it was to live on a farm. It was all hands on deck, and the kids got their own farm chores to take care of, which included feeding the chickens, letting the chickens out. They helped feed the turkeys and even the pigs. They did a lot of hauling of buckets of feed, and they were learning just how much it was going to take to raise all of this food. They also took very good care of the barn cats that we inherited with the property. Barn cats repay us by taking care of the mice, so it is a win-win. Every day we had all these little chores to do, and meanwhile we were still trying to put plans in place to make our life just a little bit easier.
I'd like to have a water, that irrigation line come over here with a garden hose adapter, so you can just hang your hose up on the fence there on the side of the garage, and then you can water or hook up a sprinkler.
That'd be awesome.
It's also going to go in the drain from the gutters of this garage that goes under the driveway and out by the chicken coop. So we'll have running water down there, at least in the summertime. We'll have to winterize it. And I'll put a T over there. It's going to run all the way along in front of the barn over to these stock tanks for the cows. And we'll have automatic water float valves on there so that the cows will always have fresh water. Sound good?
Sounds perfect. We are going to move the pigs out from the barn into their new home. This used to be part of a mink barn, and it has been converted into a chicken coop, and now we're going to convert it into a pig hut. So we're going to get our pigs out of the barn for good, out onto pasture with their own little home right out here. Everybody's out of the barn. Now we can use it for milking. Our milk cow is due July 20th, so it's coming up in about 4 weeks now. And we're going to start training her to come into the barn and get some treats and get rubbed down and brushed down so that she's all ready to be milked. We got this trailer. It's 13 feet long, and it was listed on Facebook Marketplace. I think it was $400. And we're making it into a covered wagon style chicken coop, chicken tractor, for our dual purpose meat birds. Our next big project was butchering our first batch of meat birds on the farm. Now, thankfully, we had done this before in the past, so it wasn't a new process, and it was finally a project that was turning a profit for us. We could sell these to our family and friends and make a little bit of money to try to fund this farm. All the while, we were still waiting for Lorelei to have her calf. It was about this time in June and she was supposed to be due, that we got notice from her previous owners that they had mixed up the dates, and she wasn't actually due until the end of July. So we waited, and we waited, and we waited, until finally we got to meet our very first animal born on the farm. We got a crash course in how to milk a cow while Lorelai learned how to be a mama. We started our calf sharing journey, and she was able to keep her baby with her on pasture just as we had planned. It worked out perfectly and was a great first cow experience that I know not everybody gets to have. Are you gonna go outside? First time outside. Let's go find Mama. The only thing missing from our farm were a couple of fellas to help us breed and continue our stock into next year. So we got a breeding boar, a little Hampshire named Dozy, and we brought home our bull, Digger. He's a Highland bull, and he was capable of being the herd sire for both our dairy and our beef needs. So we were very excited to find him and to bring a nice docile bull home. We were really living in a season of abundance. The garden had produced, even though it hadn't been cared for very well by us. We were getting a whole bunch of food put up on the pantry shelves. We were in supply of as much dairy as we could ever dream of. We had been incredibly lucky with our milk cow. We didn't have any issues with illness. She adjusted to being a mama really well, and we were so lucky to have these cows that we had dreamed of for so long. They were really the number one thing that we couldn't do at our old homestead was have cattle. And at this farm, we were now able to have not only a milk cow and her baby, but we had expanded into beef, something we hadn't really originally planned on adding to our farm. But after buying a couple of friends for Lorelai so she wouldn't be alone, we ended up with 2 really great cows to add to a breeding program so that we could provide ourselves, our family, and our neighbors with beef. This allowed us to be able to actually start Scott Family Homestead as a business. While selling beef was still a ways off, we were able to sell chicken and pork and really start to feel like we were putting one foot in front of the other to creating a real farm and no longer just a homestead for ourselves and for our family, but actually building a business. We were very fortunate to have people help us and support us along the way. We had some relatives come and help us put up fencing. We now had cattle fencing. We had fencing for our pigs that we had built, and we had new infrastructure, including shelters for the pigs. These were shelters that we had purchased. We also got one for the cattle, so they had someplace to go for the winter, and we finally had something to show for all of the work we had done over the past year. Looking back, it is easy to see how fortunate we were that our year 1 went as well as it did, because we were not at all prepared for what year 2 would bring. Make sure you are subscribed and following along so that you can keep up with our journey. Next week, we will have part 2 of growing our farm, and I hope that you will join us for that. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye, guys.